This presentation will be providing a brief overview of herd status, and we'll cover some proposed changes for the upcoming 2024 hunting season for the Green River Wildlife Biologist District. To give you an idea of what part of Wyoming we will be talking about, this map shows where the Green River District lies in the southwest corner of the state. This map also shows the names and boundaries for the other biologist districts, if you're interested in viewing the season proposals from any of the other biologists. So we'll get started with Chapter 5, which is antelope. The first herd that we will talk about is Sublette pronghorn. This herd occupies most of the Green River Basin from Jackson and Pinedale in the north, down to South Pass, over the Kemmer, down to Rock Springs. This herd has been slightly under objective for some time, but has been slowly growing back into its at objective range. And after the 2022 hunting season, this population was estimated at being just a little bit over 43,000 antelope, which was about 10% under its objective of 48,000. Then, of course, the 2022-2023 winter hit, which was probably the worst winter, at least in recent history, that this herd has experienced. And while it was bad everywhere, the northern portions of the herd up by Pinedale were especially hard hit. Fortunately, it wasn't quite as bad in the south though, and pronghorn that were able to get down into areas like the North Baxter Basin and the Green River corridor just north of Green River here were able to fare much better than the animals that weren't able to migrate and were stuck up north. So due to the severity of the 22-23 winter and the associated low survival estimates from collared does in the herd unit, a line transect survey was flown in the herd unit in early June 2023 with funds from the Pinedale Anticline Project Office, or PAPO, to determine how this herd had actually fared during that winter and to provide a reliable population estimate for the herd. The results of that survey suggested a herd unit-wide end of biological year, which you can think of as the day before the first fawn is born, population estimate of about 23,600 pronghorn, which was significantly smaller than a similar survey that was flown back in 2021, which came up with a population estimate of about 31,400 antelope. So as well as the whole herd unit population estimate, density estimates for each of the hunt areas flown during the line transect survey were also calculated. It's interesting to note that while the northern areas saw significant declines between the 2021 and 2023 surveys, some of the southern hunt areas actually saw increases in estimated population densities. And this was probably due to pronghorn migrating from the northern units into the southern units, trying to escape the more severe winter conditions in the northern part of the herd unit. So the model 2023 postseason population estimate for the Sublette herd was about 22,500 animals, which is approximately 57% below its objective, and the lowest this population has ever been estimated. Like as we said, after the 2022 season, this herd had been estimated at 43,200 pronghorn. So it suggests that the 2022-2023 winter caused this herd to decline by roughly 50% and took it from being at the lower end of its objective range to being significantly under objective. Observed buck ratios in the Sublette herd in 2023 were 50 bucks per 100 does herd unit wide, which puts the observed ratios for this herd within the recreational management criteria for pronghorn herds. And the observed fawn ratio in the Sublette herd was 47 fawns per 100 does in 2023, which compares to 55 fawns per 100 does seen in 2022, and to a long-term average for this herd of 64 fawns per 100 does. This low fawn ratio we saw in 2023 was probably a holdover from the impacts of the 22-23 winter and the resulting poor body condition of doe pronghorn caused by those severe winter conditions. So given the observed fawn ratio seen in 2023, this herd is expected to roughly maintain its current population size in 2024, and we'll need several years of favorable conditions for this herd to start recovering. So for the Green River portion of the Sublette herd, which includes hunt areas 92, 93, and 96, we have no proposed changes for 2024. As you may remember, Type 1 licenses for all hunt areas in this herd were reduced by at least half last year, and some of them were reduced by up to 75%, and Hunt Area 85 up by Jackson was actually closed last year because of the impacts of the 2022-2023 winter had on this herd. Also, all Type 6 and 7 doe fawn licenses were removed herd unit wide. So, because of the significant cuts that were put in place last year, we aren't proposing any new changes for 2024. The next herd we will talk about is South Rock Springs Pronghorn, which is south of Interstate 80 between the Flaming Gorge Reservoir and Highway 430. This herd has an objective range of 5,200 to 7,800 pronghorn postseason, and it's been hovering right around the lower end of its objective range for the last couple years, usually being estimated to be somewhere around plus or minus 5,000 animals. But after this last winter, we're estimating that this herd went from about 5,400 animals to approximately 4,300 pronghorn after the 2003 hunting season. Now, while this herd didn't experience near the severe winter conditions that the Sublette herd did north of the interstate, it did still experience above average winter conditions last year, which is probably the cause of the herd slipping below its objective range. In the 2023 preseason classifications, we saw buck ratios in this herd of 33 bucks per 100 does, which is at the lower end of buck to doe ratios for a recreational management herd. And this is the fifth year in a row that we've seen buck ratios being at the lower end of the recreational management guidelines. Also in 2023, we saw fawn ratios of 31 fawns per 100 does, which is below the previous 5-year average of 40 fawns per 100 does. Probably for the same reason that we saw lower fawn ratios this year in the Sublette herd. It is important to note that for the last several years, we've been seeing lower ratios in Hunt Area 112 than we've been seeing in Hunt Area 59, both for buck ratios and fawn ratios. In 2023, we saw 32 bucks per 100 does in Hunt Area 112 compared to 37 bucks per 100 does in Area 59 and 19 fawns per 100 does in Area 112 compared to 59 fawns per 100 does in Area 59. So, similar to the Sublette herd, we're not proposing any changes in the South Rock Springs pronghorn herd for 2024. Last year, we made cuts to Type 1 licenses in both Hunt Areas 59 and 112, and we removed the Type 6 doe fawn licenses from both hunt areas due to last winter. I should mention that while we're still concerned about the lower buck ratios observed in this herd, since our classification surveys for pronghorn are done before the hunting season in August, we haven't actually seen the potential impact of the lower Type 1 license numbers on buck ratios in this herd yet. Hopefully next year we'll be able to get a better handle on if reducing the Type 1 licenses helped improve the buck ratios that we've been seeing in this herd for the last couple of years. All right, so those are all the antelope hunt areas in the Green River District. So now we'll move on to Chapter 6, which is deer. The first deer herd that we will talk about is Sublette deer. And the only portion of Sublette herd that's in the Green River region is Hunt Area 131, which is the least productive portion of the Sublette herd. And it's largely just winter range for deer that summer up north, with only a limited number of resident deer that live in the hunt area year round. A lot of the deer that winter down by Superior or in the Lucite Hills are summering up north, either in the Wind River Mountains or up in the Hoback Basin. Overall, the Sublette herd is under objective after last winter, with the 2023 postseason population estimate being about 19,000 deer compared to a subjective of 32,000. Herd unit wide, the observed ratios in 2023 were 60 fawns per 100 does, which is down from the 71 fawns seen last year and below the 5-year average of 69 fawns per 100 does. And that's probably just like pronghorn, largely due to last winter. Observed buck ratios in the Sublette herd were 34 bucks per 100 does last year, which is pretty close to the 5-year average of 35, but down a little bit from last year's observed value of 36 bucks per 100 does. And those ratios are for the herd as a whole. The ratios in Hunt Area 131 would probably be quite a bit lower. Since we fly classification surveys in December, we've already had a lot of deer from the north move into Hunt Area 131 before we can fly. So it's really hard to tell what our ratios for the resident deer are. But from some research that's been going on in the herd unit, we know that resident deer in the desert have quite a bit lower fawn ratios than the migratory deer that are summering up in the Hoback and the Wind River Mountains. The proposed 2024 season for Hunt Area 131 is very similar to the season we had there in 2023. We're proposing to maintain the same conservative limitation of antlered mule deer with 4 points or more on either antler or any white-tailed deer, and only proposing a slight change to the closing date, moving it from October 5th to October 6th. And that's largely just a calendar change to have the season close on a Sunday, and also to standardize with some of the other hunt areas around us. The other deer herd that is in the Green River District is the South Rock Springs deer herd, which consists of hunt areas 101 and 102. Like most of the other deer herds in Wyoming, the South Rock Springs deer herd is currently under objective and has been for a long time. We do have a hard time modeling this population, and we can tell from some of the other metrics we look at that the model is probably underestimating this herd. But we do know that it's under objective and actually always has been since this objective was set back in 2013. One bright side, though, is that while a lot of other deer herds in the western part of the state really suffered during the 2022-23 winter, the South Rock Springs herd largely escaped the really severe winter conditions that other herds like the Wyoming Range herd experienced. Because there's more topography where this herd winters, deer were able to find pockets of lighter snow conditions on south-facing slopes and wind-blown ridges and just rain shadows that were caused by the topography, and didn't experience the same mortality rates that other deer herds that winter on just sagebrush flats saw last winter. And actually, this herd usually tends to do a little bit better after the tough winters. The increased moisture we get from the snow from those tough winters actually causes plants to grow down here for a change in the summer following those tougher winters. Since where this herd lives is pretty dry country to start with, the drought years with dry summers are actually a bigger problem for this herd than the winter conditions that it experiences, even during the tougher winters. Following the drought years and the dry summers that come with them, we tend to see lower fawn ratios in this herd. But in 2023, following this last bad winter, we saw a fawn ratio in this herd of 52, which, while it's a lot lower than we would like to see, is actually an improvement over the 5-year average of only 43 fawns per 100 does that we saw in this herd from 2018 to 2022. And that includes the high fawn ratio we saw in this herd in 2022 of 61, which was actually the highest fawn ratio that's been seen in this herd. So, given the last 2 years of above average fawn ratios, at least above average for this herd, this population should hopefully grow a little bit over the next couple of years. Also, during 2023, we saw a buck to doe ratio of 21 bucks per 100 does, which is below the special management criteria of 30 to 45 bucks per 100 does, and is down quite a bit from the ratios we've been seeing that have been in the low 30s for the last couple of years. But that low buck ratio was probably caused by the really mild conditions that we saw during the classification flight in December of 2023 here. Because of how mild the conditions were, deer were really scattered and hard to find, and so that low buck ratio is probably because of how spread out the deer were because of the mild conditions, and probably doesn't represent the true buck ratio for this herd. So for the 2024 season, we are proposing no changes for the South Rock Springs deer herd. Back in 2020, we reduced the number of licenses available in Hunt Area 102, largely because from 2016 to 2019, we had several years of really low fawn ratios that we knew was going to result in the number of bucks in those age classes to be reduced. And we figured that starting in about 2021, the number of 4 and 5 year old bucks, which is the age of bucks that hunters typically harvest in this herd, was going to be lower because of those years of lower fawn ratios. We reduced license numbers again in 2022 because of lower observed buck ratios in the herd. And so now that we're hopefully coming out on the other side of that trough of lower numbers of 4 and 5 year old bucks, we should be seeing a larger cohort of those prime-aged bucks in 2024. And this seems to be supported by the average age of harvested bucks in the herd unit, which in 2023 was 5.6 years old. The next chapter we will be covering is Chapter 7, Elk. And we have 2 herds that we'll be talking about, Steamboat Elk, or Area 100, and South Rock Springs Elk, which is areas 30, 31, and 32. The first elk herd that we will talk about is the Steamboat Elk herd, which is made up of only one Hunt Area 100. Currently, the Steamboat Elk herd is above its objective and has been above it since about 2016, when the herd went from being slightly under objective to over objective, when it seems like some number of elk moved into the area and just stayed there. The population objective for Area 100 is 1,200 elk postseason, with a range of 960 to 1,440 elk. Currently, the population estimate for this herd is right around 1,600 elk. During classification flights flown in December of 2023, a total of 960 elk were classified, with 498 of those elk being adult cows, 250 were calves, and 212 of them were bulls. Of those 212 bulls, 55 were spikes, 75 were smaller or raghorn bulls, and 82 were larger bulls, which means that the overall bull ratio for this herd was 43 bulls per 100 cows. So for the Steamboat Elk herd, we are also proposing no changes for the 2024 season. And that's because several changes that have been made to the Steamboat Elk seasons in 2023 appear to have been successful in meeting their goals and were therefore maintained for the 2024 season. The first of those changes was an increase in the number of Type 5 licenses offered, going from 200 to 250 licenses in 2023. That increase in the number of licenses was put in place to help speed up the rate that this population has moved towards this objective. Despite the fact that several years of pretty drastically increased license rates since 2016 have harvested over 4,600 elk, our annual estimates still place this herd above its population objective. However, classification sample sizes from the last 3 years, along with field observations and model estimates, suggest that this herd may be nearing this objective range. The second major change for 2023 was a change for the Type 2 licenses, moving the time that those licenses were valid in the Farson-Eden irrigation project from November to the end of January to having that license be valid starting in September. That change was done to help better address some damage concerns that we had in Farson with growing crops in the irrigation area. A change was also made to the limitation that allowed for antlered elk with 5 points or less on either antler to be harvested in the entire hunt area during October. In 2023, that limitation was changed to antlered elk with 4 points or less on either antler. Both of these changes appeared to better target both elk causing damage concerns in Farson and appeared to have helped target the younger age class bulls that are often responsible for driving up the bull ratio in this herd. So assuming that harvest rates remain consistent with what has been seen in the past, the 2024 season should harvest near 600 elk, and this level of harvest should move this population significantly closer to its objective of 1,200 elk. The other elk herd that this presentation will cover is the South Rock Springs elk herd. Hunt areas 30, 31, and 32. This herd has a midwinter trend count objective instead of a population objective like the other herds that we've talked about so far. A trend count objective was picked for this herd over a population objective because we know this herd is an interstate population and that we have pretty significant interchange between Colorado and Wyoming and also a little bit with Utah. The way that a trend count objective works is that a 3-year average of the number of elk counted during midwinter trend count flights is used to determine if the herd is at objective or not. The objective range for this herd is a 3-year trend count average of between 800 and 1,200 elk. Since we don't have any dedicated midwinter trend counts for this herd, the number of elk classified during the December classification flights is used as a surrogate trend count number. During that flight in December of 2023, a total of 1,047 elk were classified, with 501 of those elk being seen in Hunt Area 30, 83 elk being seen in Hunt Area 31, and 463 elk were observed in Hunt Area 32. Of those 463 elk, 435 of them were seen in one big group about 900 yards north of the Utah state line. So, given the number of elk seen from 2021 to 2023, the 3-year trend count average for this herd moved to 1,302 elk, which is just a little above the upper end of a subjective range of 1,200 elk. Those trend count flights also resulted in observed calf ratios of 32 calves per 100 cows and 18 bulls per 100 cows. Since this is a special management herd, that observed bull ratio of 18 bulls per 100 cows is quite a bit below the special management guidelines of 30 to 40 bulls per 100 cows. So we are proposing a few changes for the South Rock Springs elk herd for 2024. The first of those changes is reducing the number of Type 1 licenses for all 3 hunt areas in the herd because of where we are at with bull ratios, herd unit wide. This herd has actually had bull ratios that were at the minimum of or below the special management objective for 5 years now. So hopefully reducing the number of Type 1 licenses will help us bring those bull ratios back within the special management range of at least 30 bulls per 100 cows. We're also proposing a slight reduction in the number of Type 4 licenses in Hunt Area 31. And this is being proposed because of some noticeable declines in the number of cow elk present in Area 31 after several years of increased cow harvest in that hunt area. And finally, the last chapter that we will talk about in this presentation is Chapter 8, Moose. And we're going to touch just real briefly on the 2 moose hunt areas that are in the Green River District, which is Area 33 and 44. So, as I mentioned, we're going to talk just real briefly about moose hunt areas 33 and 44. And these are actually in 2 different moose herd units. Hunt Area 33 is part of the Lincoln moose herd, and Hunt Area 44 belongs to the Uinta moose herd. If you're interested in some more information on those 2 moose herds, check out the Mountain View biologist presentation, and he'll cover some more details about those 2 different herds. But Hunt Area 33 is essentially the Siskiyou National Wildlife Refuge on the Green River. And it's an area that we can allow for some limited moose harvest, and it's largely because of habitat concerns with cottonwood regeneration along the river. Hunt Area 44 covers the country south of Rock Springs between the Flaming Gorge Reservoir and the Bitter Creek Road. And this is an area that we don't really want to grow moose, again because of some habitat concerns along with the resident elk and mule deer populations down there. So in 2024, we are proposing to have the same moose seasons in Area 33 that we had in 2023, which include 2 Type 4 antlerless moose licenses, valid just for Hunt Area 33, and 3 Type 1 any moose licenses, valid for both Hunt Area 33 and 44. If you would like to submit comments on these or any other proposed seasons, you can do so by going to the Game and Fish website at the address here, or you can mail in written comments to our Casper office. Just please make sure you have any comments in by 5 p.m. on March 29th. Thank you.